Hello and welcome to the fourth Share Project discussion group. Today's topic is holidays and festival memories. 60 years of increasing affluence in the West has led to the democratisation of overseas travel. Today's seniors experienced an unprecedented broadening of their horizons as the travel industry expanded in the 1960s and 70s. Has mass tourism increased cultural exchange and understanding? Or are we only now realising the hidden costs both to the destination cultures as well as the decline at home in traditional indigenous festivals and communal celebrations? Will today's juniors continue this trend, or will the fading of cultural distinctions lead to a reassessment and revival of older forms of travel and leisure?
How did you used to spend your holidays when you were young, when you were younger?
No, not young. I remember that back in the 50s, everybody seemed to have holidays at exactly the same time, which doesn't take place as much now. So that not only did we all have our Christmas holidays or Easter holidays, the whole country was the same, and the summer holidays, but even when you went away was more or less the same time. But because we were so broke, well, nearly everybody in the country after the war, nobody went away for Christmas or Easter. Oh. So Christmas was the first big holiday, and that was just always very based around religion. You went to all of the festival, beforehand. You went to the Christmas Eve.
To church?
Yeah, church in the Church of England. And then had brilliant Christmas, because it was one of the few times that there was a lot of food. And my father was a buyer in the electricity board, and people would send him parcels, so we had a quality of food that we just didn't have for the rest of the year. I think turkeys were really rare. I mean, just having a chicken.
A chicken was probably a treat.
Was really a treat. Yeah. I mean that and Easter again, we never went away anywhere. Easter was quite around the religious side of things. But really, the other side was you had 2 or 3 weeks of freedom, because nobody sort of took any time off to look after you. So the kids, we always used to just go out and play together, and we'd play all day, and then your mum would call you at about 7 o'clock at night. And you'd come back in, but just being able to have the freedom of just playing together as a big sort of group of kids in the same street.
What sort of games did you used to play?
Oh, we made up our own box carts, which was like prams on wheels with bits of wood. So we used to have an awful lot of games where we'd pull each other around and have competitions about who is the box carts. Or we'd be playing with dinky toys. Yeah, we had lots and lots of.
What are they?
A dinky toy. It was along with, it was before Matchbox, and they were the big. I think it's another example, I suppose, of British industry collapsing, because dinkies were the biggest manufacturers of small toys, of model cars, in the whole world, as far as we were concerned. But then Britain was the whole world from our point of view. But anyway,
where did you grow up?
In Coventry. Oh. So what about yours?
My summer, I grew up in Jamaica. I'm Valerie, and like you, I grew up on a farm, so we didn't have anything called holidays. The only difference it marked in the year, that when the school closed, you didn't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to school, because we had
Did
to work on the farm.
2 o'clock in the morning?
3 o'clock,
3 o'clock
in the morning.
Oh my
because
God.
school started at 8, and it was an hour away from where we lived. And we had to help out on the farm, get the animals fed before we left for school. So that's how you mark the start of holidays. Right, you didn't have to get up at 3, you got up a bit later.
How did you wake up? Did you...
By the cocks crowing. Didn't have clocks or any, or grandma shouting at us and getting us up. But you just sort of, you were just programmed to wake up. I suppose the animal, the atmosphere, the sort of texture in the air in the farmyard changes, and you just sort of knew. And
Did you
just
go to bed early?
We used to go to bed early because, in particular, when we stayed at my grandmother's house in the very, very rural part of Jamaica, we didn't have any electricity. So we had oil lamps and things, and there was just the radio. So I grew up on Radio 4. There's no television. So you were up in the hills with no electricity listening to Radio 4.
So Radio 4, the BBC Radio 4.
BBC Radio 4 was
Isn't that extraordinary?
what I grew up through all my childhood, and I still listen in my kitchen today. I've got Radio 4 on. It's sort of something that you grew up with in the background for my entire childhood.
So what were your biggest festivals? What festivals stuck out during the year?
Well, Christmas was quite strange for us as well, because it began on like 2 days, about the 23rd, when we have them. That's when the market was, and that's when we had really big shopping as well. And usually at this time of the year, because we had no fridge or freezers, and my granddad was a farmer, so all the people in the village, so we sort of raised a cow or a pig or whatever we were going to kill for Christmas, and everybody in the village would sort of mark off which part of the animal they would have, and then we killed it on the 23rd.
So would they mark it off while it was still alive?
Yeah, well, you had like a model board, a blackboard of a cow, and you marked off the bits of that which belonged. You bought that in advance before, and when all the bits of the cow was marked off, you then killed it.
One person who killed the animals? Or...
I don't know, actually. It used to disappear in the early hours of the morning and came back as meat at the end of the day. So I don't know what happened. So that was, but on the 23rd, although we weren't actually a Catholic country, Christmas was celebrated almost like a very staunch Catholic country, that we always had a midnight mass in the square. Now, we were very eclectic because my grandfather was a minister, a Methodist minister, but we were more interested in sort of going to church. So if we were late on a Sunday, we went to the nearest church. That could be Catholic. It didn't really matter what it was, as long as we got to church. So on Christmas Eve, we actually we took food around to the hospital, to the local hospital. And that had to be completed before midnight, because at midnight we went into the square where the church was, and you had a midnight mass in the square, and then you distributed your gifts to your family, and then you went home. So on Christmas Day we didn't cook, we go to the beach. So we were up very early, you packed, I didn't have a hot meal on Christmas Day until I came to England. In fact, I thought it was strange having a hot meal on Christmas Day as well. So you packed very early and you were on the beach, and you had Christmas Day actually on the beach. So although we were sort of very religious, it wasn't that strict. The very strict religious festival was Easter. We had the whole Palm Sunday, you're marching along in your white dress, carrying your palm leaves, and leading a donkey, and it was a real donkey. As well, up to the church as well. But going away on holidays, I think when I was early teens, I went with my granddad to one of the islands. And I thought that was normal, that every other child. It was only when I came here and met other people from the Caribbean I realised how strange that was. But my granddad traded in coffee and oranges. So I actually went with him as a trader. So that was a sort of a holiday, which I found out subsequently was unusual. Yeah.
I think in England the biggest holiday as a holiday was the 2-week holiday break that had been developed over the previous 100 years when railways started, and then...
Well, in summer, in August?
Yes, in summer, in the August holidays. When they had all of the Blackpool and Great Yarmouth and Brighton and all of the holiday resorts that were really, really big in the 50s and even to the 60s until they started to discover Europe. And so when you went on holiday, you went to the coast, and everybody would go, not just the people from the same factory, but everybody from the same town would always go on the same days. And they nearly always went to the same place, whether it was Blackpool or not. And I remember we had a very, very old car that used to nearly often break down and would do about 30 miles an hour. And we were different in a way, because we would go to Norfolk one year and to Wales another year and to the south coast, whereas most people just went to the same place. But they had the most enormous traffic jams. It was actually a topic. Yes, it was a topic on the radio, on the TV. Even there was, I remember Giles Cartoon, who you won't remember, but who wrote he was a cartoonist for the Daily Express when it was a good newspaper, where he had an enormous traffic jam, and the father was saying, "Oh, I'll take this shortcut," and you could see the map, and the shortcut just actually went in a big semicircle and came back 100 yards further on. But literally, because there were no motorways, if you can imagine, I mean, millions of cars and
heading
charabancs,
for the coast, yes,
all heading for the coast in the same ways. It would take maybe a journey which would normally be 3 or 4 hours, which we would do in 2 hours now, would take 12 hours. And the bank holiday traffic jam was part of the holiday. And then we went there, and you, I suppose you learnt that British spirit of, we brought you to enjoy yourself now. Enjoy yourself. Even though the wind would be pouring in, the rain would be coming down, and you'd be forced shivering into the North Sea or some parts of the Atlantic, you know. But at the same time, it was such a break. We all looked forward to it, absolutely amazingly.
Yeah.